Really, the topic that has taken a lot of oxygen out of the room has been the U.S. election. Talking to visiting officials who'd say that a lot of things could change in 11 days, 12 days here. And so, that's kind of, at one point I said to someone visiting, this is the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room. They said, no, I think it's 100,000 pounds. And so, it's looming over this entire process. These meetings are normally the focus of and the biggest event of the financial year for economic policymakers globally, kind of the economic and financial Super Bowl, but certainly taking place in the shadow of this election contest on November 5th.
Eric, they say one thing when they're, being recorded or whatever on TV or on radio, for the record. But you're a good reporter, and you go to the bars afterwards and hang out with these folks. What are they saying? What are they saying when they're not being recorded?
Sure. Well, I think, potentially a drink or two into the evening after the conversations of the day have wrapped up, people talk about the concern that particularly if former President Trump returns to the White House, that their perceptions about U.S. leadership in the world could change, expecting an administration that could act much more unilaterally rather than multilaterally. We saw in the beginning of the Biden administration a big effort to repair and to fortify the alliances and cooperation with the rest of the G7, with Europe. And if you contrast that with, for example, President Trump's experience complaining about the G7 and about Canada after one of the meetings there during his administration, one of the leaders' meetings, and just an expectation that the U.S. might have a much more go-it-alone strategy towards dealing with a lot of the challenges that we currently have officials from almost 200 countries here together in Washington trying to solve together and collaboratively. So really expecting, if President Trump is elected, a very different kind of approach and culture coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, just a few blocks down from where these meetings are happening.
Yeah, exactly. So, have you heard any strategies from some of these folks if, in fact, we get a second Trump presidency? Any strategies about how they may want to try to adapt here, or is it just kind of a wait and see and react to what may come out of a new White House?
Sure. I spoke with the finance minister of Pakistan on Tuesday. He was talking about his nation's work with administrations, both Democrat and Republican, in the past, and a need to kind of redouble efforts there. I spoke yesterday with Ajay Banga, who was nominated to be World Bank president by President Biden, but talking about a hope and an expectation that President Trump, if he is the winner of the election, would see the value in the World Bank's ability to leverage the money that comes to it, either fourfold or tenfold in the depending on the context of the lending. So certainly everyone realizing this is a very close election, an expectation that if Kamala Harris, the vice president, wins, there could be more potential for continuity there. And certainly a lot of policymakers hoping for that and hoping for that kind of collaborative approach, but everyone also preparing themselves for what could be more of a chaotic or a disruptive U.S. presence on the world stage in Trump 2.0.
Are they mentioning Ukraine at all and the impact on Europe?
Certainly there's some focus around Ukraine and what kind of support the U.S. would or would not give to the Zelensky administration in terms of its relationship with Russia. What happens in Ukraine and the longevity or the timing of the war has big implications, including in financial markets, financial world, on Ukraine's debt situation, Ukraine being one of the biggest IMF borrowers at the moment. So certainly a lot of focus there, as well as what the continued conflict in Israel and Gaza means in terms of potential to cause commodity price spikes. So a lot of financial repercussions from what we see on the geopolitical stage.